Will the genocide continue until Sunday? Well, the fact that unfortunately the declaration states Sunday, that means technically, unless there's something we haven't understood, there could be more people, unfortunately, being martyred up until Sunday. We heard reports about attacks. So the Sunday is the official day of implementation. Even also interesting, you're adding in interesting things. Will Iran be restrained from attacking Israel now? Listen, when Iran wasn't responding and when the ceasefire in Lebanon started, I said a couple of things. Iran could be using its lack of response to use it as leverage to reach a ceasefire, because all of these things are connected. The Palestinian resistance and people, first and foremost. Secondly, the supporting fronts, including Iran. Then, of course, the trade, the economy, Israel's situation globally, the boycotts, the economic impact, all of these things are connected. The international developments, the regional developments too. Clearly, that has worked. So that means Iran has achieved something diplomatically without doing true promise 3. And also, another thing I said when it comes to Hezbollah at the time, they did not say that one of the conditions was to have a ceasefire with Gaza. However, that was something that was clearly not published. And here we go. We have a ceasefire in Gaza within the 60-day time frame of the ceasefire with Lebanon. Meaning, Hezbollah were true to their word up until the last second. So when people were already criticizing them and you betrayed and you this and that, some people have the audacity to say these things, they were clearly honest. And it was indeed tied. Now, of course, you need to add the pressure that's coming from the US, and you need to add a couple of other things too. Although, again, these things could be an act and all of this could be agreed upon before, and, they're just selling it in this package now, right, to make it go through. But fact of the matter is we have a ceasefire. So will Iran have the same urge to respond? No, they wouldn't have the same urge to respond. Will that affect their credibility and level of deterrence against Israel? I don't think so. That's a personal opinion. I don't think so. Usually it's a tit for tat. You attack, I attack, you set a precedent. But Israel, by now, they know the firepower of Iran. They know Iran can destroy them. And Israel also knows that Iran can defend itself. And not only that Iran can defend itself, Iran has increased its capabilities of self-defense. All of that is very significant. So we might see True Promise 3 being put on hold, or we could see something very limited. However, I think that they will be putting True Promise 3 on hold. Francis, sorry if you said it before, but is it a temporary ceasefire or permanent? This is the beginning of a permanent ceasefire. This is the first phase of a permanent ceasefire. The reason we haven't had a ceasefire so far since the temporary ceasefire a year ago was the fact that Hamas rejected outright any other temporary ceasefire because they didn't want to put the Palestinian people in the same position they were in before, where Israel could say, oh, cool, temporary ceasefire ended, I'm going to go back and start killing children again. No, they did not want that. So this ceasefire is permanent. It's a multi-phased ceasefire, and it will be starting the implementation when, according to reports on Sunday, but other reports said maybe 1 to 2 days as well. And James, sometimes you're also saying, talking about Iran, and will they stand down? I hope I clarified that with my answer to Stephen Kelly, where I personally, that's my opinion. I think Iran put True Promise 3 now on hold, so long as the ceasefire persists, and so long that Israel withdraws from Lebanon in the next 10 to 12 days, because that would be the deadline, basically. And Mr. Sulaiman, thank you as well for your super. Said, Salam Mahmoud, do you think Hamas will fight for statehood with this hostage trade ceasefire? That's interesting. The thing with regards to the statehood, that was something that was being spoken about. However, we really did not hear a lot of details about it. The only thing that we heard details about is when Joe Biden back in April told Benjamin Netanyahu, you have an offer on the table, full peace with Saudi Arabia and even recognition from other Arab states too, in return for having a Palestinian state. That's in accordance to the peace proposal that Saudi Arabia gave Israel in 2000. But at the time, the former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon tore it down, threw it in the bin. Netanyahu said, we won't be accepting that. We won't be accepting what he labels as a terrorist state next to them. Have there been talks that the public hasn't been aware about potentially having a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders? Maybe. But again, Hamas, they only said before, although unlike, of course, the PA led by Mahmoud Abbas, who again don't represent the majority of the Palestinian people, Hamas at one point said, well, they offered Israel, their late spiritual leader, Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, he proposed Israel back in the 90s with a long-term hudna. He said, call it hudna as in a ceasefire, 40-year ceasefire, he told them. No problems, no this, no that. Then Hamas also refined their position from we will only accept the one state. That's after the passing of the late Ahmad Yassin. They said we're willing to temporarily accept a state on the 1967 borders, so long as it's in the entirety of the 1967 borders, not the areas that Israel, took by force, of course, occupied. Now we have over 900,000 settlers, illegal squatters in the West Bank. But we will not be recognizing Israel's legitimacy over the whole country. Israel again rejected that, or the consensus in Israel about rejecting a Palestinian state. However, was there an agreement that, again, to sell that to the Israeli public and for the people to accept it, you have to kind of give it to them with drips, right? Like they started giving the people drips of the ceasefire, even with the right-wing media in Israel. If that's the case, that could be something. But I personally don't think so. I think Israel is too arrogant, really, to have a two-state solution. It's not there. It hasn't been. Israel hasn't been installed there by the British Empire, and then later under the patronship of the United States administration, as the leading superpower of the world, to be a peaceful country coexisting in harmony with its neighbors. There were prospects of that potentially in the 90s, but they killed the Israeli prime minister who was striving for peace, Rabin. Who killed him? The deep state in Israel, most likely supported by the United States. Why? Because who are we going to sell weapons to? Who are you going to murder people with? What do you mean peace? We don't want peace. That's why there are people in Israel, very few, who know that the United States of America is Israel's biggest enemy by supporting them the way they do, instead of actually, fading away from all of that. Okay, you had this colonial history, change path now, look at what's best for the Israeli people and also the Palestinian people, of course, and move on. No, they don't want that, because it's made there to be an entity that is a cash cow for the military-industrial complex. And HS also said Israel will lie about the ceasefire. Again, we will wait and see, of course, when it comes to the lies. And thank you for that. Miss Cheeky 007, thank you so much as well. Let's go to Wendy Gofton. Will Western press be allowed into Gaza? Yeah, I think that they will be allowed, because if the Rafah crossing is open, well, lots of media used to come from Rafah before. Western media was asking to go into Gaza all this time. Israel prevented them. They only gave them these Zion propaganda tours on military vehicles to spread their propaganda. They didn't let them go on the... But we didn't need journalists from the West in Gaza. The people were documenting everything. And there were brave, heroic journalists. Some of them, many of them lost their lives. 200 lost their lives, more than all of the journalists killed in World War II. And again, not enough is being spoken about them. So the people who were live streaming everything, whether they were there or not, it wouldn't have made a big difference, to be honest with you. But I think following this, I believe that there will be an option for Western media to go in, and also hopefully volunteers. I'm sure many people would like to volunteer and go physically, help, either the rebuild campaigns, help with children, or, orphans, the displaced. But there's a lot of things, people can help with, but that would be primarily from the Egyptian side. I highly doubt that there's going to be any sort of leniency from Israel when it comes to their side of the borders. Samba, boy, Mahmoud, do you know if the resistance has a plan to, in case the occupation forces don't follow the broker deal, special leadership assassinations like in Lebanon? I mean, look, a resistance that has shown you levels of heroism that no one showed us in history. In history, by the way. In history, no one showed us what the Palestinian resistance showed us in the past 15 months. Anyone, give me an example. I challenge anyone to give me an example of something like this. The greatest people you hear about in the history books, not to that level. So if they had a plan to fight and be victorious over these depraved child killers for the past 15 months, they have a plan B if Israel breaks the ceasefire. Aisha Mukhtar, we don't know what the Israelis have been promised. Some saying it's the West Bank. I'll tell you what I think if Israel was promised the West Bank. First and foremost, no one has the right to promise Israel anything. Israel is a foreign occupying apartheid entity planted there by colonial powers. They're a foreign body. They're not an authentic body. Their whole existence is based on a pseudo-history, pseudo-narrative with people who faked their identity and created this facade of Israel and the Israeli nationality. Then, so no one has the right. That's firstly. Secondly, let's say Donald Trump said, Israel, fine, you can annex the West Bank. What would that mean? Well, the Palestinians in the West Bank, they would have a bigger case against Israel to receive equal rights. Is Israel willing to give equal rights to the Palestinian people of the West Bank? That's something that's described as a horror scenario by many Zionists in Israel, who are not right-wing, by the way, and who claim that the right wing is leading us to a dual national state, which is their nightmare. For some reason, a dual national state is their nightmare. Why? Because they don't want to give democratic rights to the populations in Gaza and the West Bank. Why? Because the shape of the country will change. If you have democratic votes, democratic elections, genuine equality between the Jordan River to the sea, do you think Israel will remain in the shape that it is? Of course it won't. It will not be continuing the shape that it is. So if they want to promise that, and if Netanyahu would be stupid enough to go ahead with it, he will be firstly receiving a lot of objection from Zionists who view things differently. Secondly, that would give the Palestinians, well, more cause. They wouldn't be asking for statehood now. They would be asking for equal rights. They would tell you, where are my equal rights, right? Palestinian citizens of 1948 occupied territories are asking for that, aren't they? Israel claims that they have full rights and full democracy. In complete contradiction, because Israel labels itself as the nation state of the Jewish people solely. That's law. Came in the late 2010s. So that would be very problematic for them, and they would need to make very big calculations. As a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton warned Israel. They said either you give the Palestinian people a state, or you will, at the end of the day, lose your identity as a Jewish state. Although we all know this Jewish state thing is a facade, by the way. Zionism and Judaism are the biggest contradiction in history. Zionism is the worst thing that happened to the Jewish people in history. Worse than Germany, worse than anything you can imagine. And Lydia is also asking if he will annex the West Bank and Gaza. Some are saying this probability. Gaza, no way. Gaza is the rock that will never be beaten. There was an article in Israel. There was a columnist in Israel, very well-known one. He said, we can expand as much as we want. We can occupy and go and try and invade, but we will never defeat Gaza. Gaza is a solid rock that's made of material that cannot be defeated. It's different. That's why I ridiculed Netanyahu and Israel from day one when they said that we're going to eliminate the Hamas. He ended up eliminating himself. Teshikoma said, I heard that Trump will let diapers continue the genocide if diapers decide to continue. That is not entirely correct. I'll tell you what the reports are saying. The reports are saying in Israel, again unverified, because then we will have to see how things are. Israel, if it sees a threat from Gaza, it would be able to have targeted attacks in Gaza, not in the case of full-scale war, but targeted attacks in Gaza, or maybe attack a tunnel, or do this and that in Gaza. Well, that means the Palestinian resistance can strike them with a couple of missiles too. What do you think? It's one-sided? Israel agrees to the Hamas have launched missiles with genocide. With 15 months of genocide, they've been launching missiles from Beit Hanun, an area that Israel destroyed in October 2023. So if Israel wants to attack, they will be getting an attack as well. It's not in their interest. But everyone swallowed the pill by now in Israel. They know very well Hamas is there to stay. The Palestinian resistance is there to stay. And they won't be defeated. And they will be getting stronger as well. Israel wants the solution? Perfect. The solution is very easy. Equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea. You won't have armed resistance. You won't have Hamas. You won't have nothing. Hamas and the resistance to Israel is a symptom or an antidote to a disease and a virus called Zionism. Zionism is what must be eliminated and wiped off the earth and be illegalized. That's what people should be talking about. So if they want to, act arrogant, they will have people to return them a favor. Stephen, are Zio tank soldiers, etc., now withdrawing from Gaza? Yes. No, they'll start to withdraw now, not just from Sunday. Even though technically it should be from Sunday, but clearly there was like a prerequisite. Egypt confirmed most of the forces already withdrew from the Philadelphia corridor. Most of them. So they're already withdrawing now, and it looks like hundreds of aid trucks were already going in from the videos that I published earlier on as well, coming from Gaza. Mind over matter, do you think if the ceasefire holds, Ansarullah and Hezbollah will stand down because the main reason of them attacking Israel is because of their genocide in Gaza? Yes, I believe so. I believe that we will stop the attacks. First of all, Lebanon, we have a ceasefire that's due to be continued. Israel will have to now withdraw from the remaining parts of South Lebanon. And Ansarullah will stop, because they said end the genocide and lift the siege. And indeed, these two will be, the siege has to be lifted, because that's it, aid is going to get in and everything. But however, listen, some agreements, they don't speak about them. Like there could be many benefits that haven't been published simply for Israel to save face. And from a Palestinian side, they don't mind having them declared just to kind of let the get them basically without saying that they have received them. But I believe if this holds, we're headed towards a de-escalation. Karen, do you think the war crimes will be exposed for those, and those culpable actually be held to account? The war crimes have already been exposed to everyone on earth, and those culpable actually be held to account. So many countries across the world are now chasing the genocide soldiers. And don't be surprised if people start, doing stuff or whatever. That's the thing. They're using any action against them now across the world. They're known and their images are known. Israel is trying very hard to hide their identities, and the prime minister is wanted. I hope that we will see a day where we will see them being brought to account on this earth. Because in the hereafter, I'm fine. I know, we know very well what's coming for them. But here on earth, we hope we see the day with them. Saying that there are many war criminals walking freely and giving lectures globally, right? Much bigger than Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a small corner shop in comparison to the massive supermarkets of terror in other countries who killed millions of people and roaming around freely. Let's not forget that. Amir Alavi. If Israel regime broke the ceasefire, then Iran starts True Promise 3. If Israel breaks the ceasefire in a significant manner, it's a possibility, although currently seems unlikely. Then Iran would have a much bigger excuse to have True Promise 3. Yes, I believe so. And don't forget, the looming threat of True Promise 3 and those hypersonic missiles landing on the heads of the child killer bases in Israel are embedded in the heads of the Zionist leaders and the population too. They know what Iran is capable of. Stephen Kelly, what about mental health support and treatment for the Gaza children people? Very interesting and very important question. The people in Gaza, Professor Gabor Mate, a Holocaust survivor who was a staunch anti-Zionist, by the way, spoke with one of his children once on a podcast, Daniel Mate, if you can go to my podcast and watch it. He said that back in 2005, the children of Gaza, if I remember correctly, had the biggest rate of trauma in children across the whole world. That's in 2005. We didn't even have the wars in 2008, 2012, 2014, and the Gaza genocide. You need an army of doctors and, mental health support for them. And there are people. I mean, Turkey said they will be focusing a lot on that when it comes to mental health. And there will be lots of doctors who are volunteers to go into Gaza now, hopefully once the restrictions are lifted on people entering. And hopefully many would be able to go abroad for treatment. And don't forget, there will be internal campaigns too. Because although Israel killed approximately 1,000 healthcare workers in Gaza, there are still many who will continue the treatment and the healing. Dylan is asking if the ceasefire deal is available to the public. If so, unfortunately not. There is no draft available to the public with all of the details. There are only brief, thick lines when it comes to the ceasefire that I spoke about in the beginning. But they did not get into details. And I mentioned before that we might see that to protect the ceasefire agreement, you don't give in all of the details, because then they would be out for scrutiny, unnecessary pressure, and they could fail. And even from the side who's benefiting, it wouldn't be at their benefit to publish them and then not have them because of a problem. And from Israel's side, at least more people don't know. So unfortunately, we don't have that yet. If they do, then of course I will talk about them. Kudampuli Fewi. Hi Mahmoud, do you think that over the time the right of the return will also be possible for the Palestinians living abroad? The return of the Palestinian people who were expelled from their homes by the Zionist terrorist gangs in 1948 and 1967 will return to Palestine. It's only a matter of time. And of course, the human nature is always in a rush, in a hurry, to get all of the results immediately, quickly. That's not how things work. However, the more time goes by, the closer we are of seeing the dawn end, and we see the actual morning coming for a liberated Palestine and the people returning. That's something that no one has the right to, tell the Palestinian people who are expelled from their homes that you cannot return just because some thugs came and said that this has been promised to me by someone, therefore I'm going to kick you out. It's not how it works, unfortunately. And the rights of people who continue to ask for them, they will always be achieved so long as the people keep fighting for them. It's as if it's a natural thing. People who can constantly talk about their rights and fight to get them, they will eventually get them. No empire stays powerful. No state remains powerful. And we have only seen an elevation when it comes to the Palestinian cause and a decline when it comes to Israel. Kimberly Jones, what about the Palestinian Authority? Will they stop? Well, the resistance in Jenin, they declared yesterday, thank you for your question, that they actually reached an agreement with the Palestinian Authority to end the hostilities, a deal that has been brokered by committees of resolution. They have committees that do resolutions, dispute resolutions between people that are made out of, certain people in society that have their weight, both with the authority and with the resistance. So they said that they decided to end the hostilities. And I think also the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, they realized that it would be difficult to hide how shameful they are, killing their own people and outright declaring shamelessly that they will not fight the occupation in the West Bank. Plus, it's an unelected authority at the end of the day. If you talk about Hamas in Gaza, Hamas won democratic elections. And they, of course, put their foot down when there were coup attempts against them. But the Palestinian president, is someone elected him? No one elected him. He has people who don't like him from within. But of course, they're there to serve the people who put them there after the Oslo Accords. Stephen Kelly, what role does Egypt have over the ceasefire? A great role, a very important role Egypt has over the ceasefire. Egypt is not only a mediator, but a country that has borders with Gaza and with Israel. And Egypt played a massive part. And the biggest part that I believe Egypt has done as a state was the fact that they did not allow Israel to complete its ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. Of course, there's a lot of criticism, not about Egypt only, but about all of the Arab states and their lack of action in the face of the genocide. However, when it comes to the early days when Israel was applying pressure and international countries on Egypt to completely open the border so the Palestinian people can flee and have a mass exodus that would have made Israel's plans much quicker in ethnically cleansing Gaza, Egypt stood. And Egypt deployed forces in Sinai, and they did not submit. And they also took the side of the Palestinian resistance when it comes to the Philadelphia corridor. Israel at one point said that they are, Smotrich said they are to blame for the 7th of October for allowing all of these weapons to Gaza. Why did Netanyahu call the Philadelphia corridor the southern border of the axis of evil? Why? Because he knows the majority of everything smuggled to Gaza comes from that border. People can act like it's not a thing. Egyptians can deny as much as possible. Everyone who knows. That's the lifeline. Apart from the fact, of course, that the Palestinians, develop their own things to a very large extent. Stephen Kelly, yes, aid trucks are going into Gaza. You asked if they're going from the Egyptian side, the aid trucks. I don't know where they were coming from, to be fair. I only saw a video of an influx. They could have been going in either from Rafah, but that's unlikely because it's still not open yet. Most likely from one of the Israeli occupying areas. So either Kisufim or Kerem Shalom, they call it Karm Abu Salem, to the southern eastern part of Gaza that has a border with Egypt and Egypt, Gaza, and Israel too. Could be from that, but to be fair, that video they did not describe exactly where they were coming in from. Think before you type. Israel, with an entire Western backing of advanced weapons and money, can't defeat a small militia group. How embarrassing is that? Totally. Stephen, did you think the ceasefire will truly last? It appears to be, from my observation, and I have been observing, that it does look serious, and I do think that it has a very high potential of lasting. Cookie dough, will Ansarullah stop, or have they already stopped their support front for Palestine? They were launching missiles yesterday, saying that in support for the Palestinian negotiator, we're launching a missile, or 2 or 5. I haven't heard anything today. However, it looks like they might pause from now. But they have an excuse to continue because technically haven't got in, and there have been confirmed attacks. Because don't forget, don't get your hopes up for everything to end up until it's taking effect, right? And that date was set to be Sunday. However, it could be earlier. So they have an excuse to still attack. I haven't heard personally about anything that happened today. Okay, TMZ BGD. Do you think they'll respect the ceasefire, or will it be like Lebanon? And does this mean more aid can get into Gaza? I'll start with the second one. Yes, it means more aid can get into Gaza. It's already getting in. And it will be more than what used to get in on a daily basis before the 6th of October. Then do you think they'll respect the ceasefire? Will it be like Lebanon? Israelis themselves confirm, the Americans confirm, that Hamas were very tough negotiators, and that they would not have accepted the ceasefire so long as it doesn't confirm the ending of the hostilities and eventually reaching an end to the war. So for people who are expecting this to be a replica of Lebanon, I can tell you, I can safely say that it doesn't appear to be that way. It is very unlikely for it to be that way. You know, it can't be conclusive, but it's very unlikely. The reason that Hamas have, and in Lebanon, Hezbollah openly declared it's a temporary ceasefire. And Israel used the side document they had with the US to conduct these attacks. In Gaza, there's no side document. And also, we've already had a temporary ceasefire. This is a permanent ceasefire. It's unlikely. And what's happening with Lebanon will eventually stop as well. Most likely after the 60 days. And despite all of the talk from Israel, because, you know, they can talk a lot, you know. And also, TMZBGD asked about what does this mean for True Promise 3? Will Iran retaliate? Will also Houthi ceasefire? Yeah, we spoke about Iran. I personally said that the Iranians will put it on hold because they would have been achieving diplomatic things that they wanted to achieve through these ceasefires. The president of Iran said if Israel stops killing children, we might consider the level of response, although he still said that they will respond. However, I personally think that they will put it on hold for now. It doesn't mean it's never coming, right? But I highly doubt that they will do it if there is actual de-escalation and ceasefire. And Houthis will stop once it's implemented. Once the ceasefire starts to get implemented. Stephen Kelly, is Hezbollah going to stay silent, or are they waiting to see if Israel break it? Hezbollah told Israel, you are breaching now. They only sent them a warning with one attack. Israel continued to breach the ceasefire. However, Hezbollah told them, day 61 will be different than day 60. That means if day 61 comes and Israel hasn't withdrawn from Lebanon and they are still attacking, Hezbollah are at liberty to go back to 1 or 2 days prior the temporary ceasefire implementation in Lebanon, which was 400 to 500 projectiles on central Israel.